Hi, and welcome to Regenerative Revolution. I'm Jackie Sersel. I'm here with Lindsay Unsel. And today we are talking about the gardening co-op that we're working on starting in Norman, Oklahoma. There's quite a few people who want to be a part of this, and a lot of them just couldn't make it today. We're having a hard time getting everybody together for a meeting. So I suggested we just do this, record the conversation, and then share it with people who couldn't be here, which is kind of the whole idea of this channel, is getting people involved in the projects that I'm working on or helping people with by giving people a way to, watch the meetings after the fact and get caught up. So we're going to go ahead and jump on in here, giving a little context, and some of the people even involved in this might not kind of know where we're at. Is that we're trying to start this co-op. We need to incorporate it. We're at the very first stage, and that means we need to figure out how we're making decisions before we move forward with making decisions. So previously I had sent out a document, and maybe I can even pop it up here really quick. It was a list of kind of options that we could take as far as our legal and governance structure. I had sent this out to people listing the options, and we talked about it a little bit. Didn't have a whole lot of feedback from it, so I just went ahead and made proposals of what I thought the best structures would be. And so we're looking at the very first proposal, and that is to initialize our governance process. So this would be the process that we would use from here on out to make decisions, and I'm also just assuming that that's the process we're using to make the decision on this proposal as well. So I've been trying to do that, but there was some confusion about what I meant, because I tend to speak in legalese. I should probably be a lawyer, but I don't want to go to law school, so I'm a business consultant instead. But yeah, I tend to write in legalese, and I'm going to have to do that when I write the bylaws and the incorporation articles of incorporation for this co-op. But that's just how I write. So I wrote the proposal in this very legalese kind of way. And so it's a little confusing, and I know I'm making a lot of kind of assertions here of we should use Holacracy, and not everybody knows what Holacracy is. So I really need to probably do some explaining. So Lindsay had some good questions, so I thought we could just jump on and talk it out with Lindsay and answer her questions, and then hopefully that answers other people's questions as well. And of course, you guys can always message me, talk to me individually if you have more questions. But I want to get through this as quickly as possible. So let's go ahead and jump in. So this document, just starting here, the document on the left, for the audience, I have the documents open underneath. I have meeting notes on the right, and then I have the governance proposal on the left. So I created this document to track our proposals. And in this, I'm talking about how we're going to track and make decisions. So like when somebody makes a proposal, this is what they would do. Perhaps they could send out a proposal in a separate document, and then we could copy and paste it into here. I'm not sure exactly how that would work best. Or people could just open this shared Google Doc and type it directly into this document. But this is a format that I kind of came up with. And the reason I came up with this format is because we've been having so much trouble getting people together to have an in-person meeting. Like literally, like we have one person. So like we can't even get like 2 or 3 people together to have a meeting. So we really need a way to make decisions asynchronously, meaning we don't all have to be in the same room at the same time. So I came up with this format to write out your proposal so that you could just email it, message it to everybody, and then we can discuss it online and come to a decision online. So coming over here, let me open it up so I can see it. The governance proposal, and I made a lot of notes on this trying to explain. But yeah, the summary is I propose that we adopt the Holacracy Constitution and use the asynchronous process outlined below to make both governance and tactical decisions with an online forum and documents. Lindsay, was this where it was confusing, or was it actually above this, like in the whole format that was confusing?
No, it was pretty much like this whole first part here. It's just very legalistic, just in writing.
Well, by first part, do you mean the entire first proposal?
Until it gets to, like, decide legal structure. Pretty much just, like, this first whole, like...
Right. So that's the first proposal. So each of these headings is a separate proposal. So I'm proposing that we initialize the governance process before we decide the legal structure. So yeah, this all is, and I did this way because I didn't want to like write out all of the rules of Holacracy. Like there's lots of documents and videos on the Holacracy website that explain it, that go into detail on the rules. So I wanted to try to make the proposal like short and not like write 20 pages, because I easily could write 20 pages like in plain English explaining it, but that's already on the Holacracy website.
Good idea. Overwhelming with all the information. Mm-hmm. So, can you kind of just give a gist of the Holacracy Constitution you read? Like I went to the little website and this link, kind of got a general understanding, but you might be able to explain it better.
Yeah. So, and I don't want to leave people confused here. I think for anybody joining this co-op, we would need an orientation. And we would need to have maybe even a class on how to use Holacracy. And I can teach that, although I'm not certified to teach Holacracy. So this wouldn't be a public class. This would be something just for members. I do want to become certified in Holacracy so that I can teach like public classes on this in the future. Yeah, we'll need some sort of a primer because it is a totally different decision-making structure than most people are used to. So the basic premise of Holacracy is that it's based on consent. So I've had this conversation with several people who are like big proponents of consensus, and they tend to argue that consent is the same as consensus, but I would argue that maybe it is in some technicalities of like how consensus is officially supposed to be done. But in practice, most people, when they have a meeting that's run by consensus, they're not running it by consent. That is not what's actually going on. I've done this for 20 years. I've been a community organizer for 20 years, and I've used consensus in most of the organizations I've been a part of, and 99% of the time it is not consent driven. It is everybody needs to agree on everything. That's what is actually going on. And what ends up happening is we have 3-hour-long conversations on whether the toaster should go on this side of the kitchen or that side of the kitchen. Literally. I have been in that conversation. It is so stupid. It's like, that is not an effective way to run an organization. Now, for like housing co-ops where you have 5 people living in a house together, okay, sure. That is like the one situation that I've been in where like consensus actually makes sense, because you're actually in relationship with those people all the time and it's your house and you want to have a say in where the toaster goes. Okay. And it's like this whole process of like growth. It's like being in a workshop for authentic relating or something. Like you're like in a nonviolent communication workshop for 3 hours a week, like working out your personal issues with your roommates. Like that's what ends up happening in a consensus organization. And so, that's not an effective way to run a business. However, this idea that, people should be able to block things if they can show that it's detrimental to the organization, like that has value. And that's basically what consent is. It's saying that anybody can block an organization if they don't, can block a proposal if they don't consent. If they actually believe that this proposal would damage the organization's ability to fulfill its purpose. But in order to do that, you need to have a very clear purpose that everyone agrees to, that's defined. And you need to have a clear process, like to make that actually work. So Holacracy is one structure that's been created to try to accomplish that. Sociocracy is another kind of version. Sociocracy, though, is only a set of principles. It's 4 principles. It's not a complete decision-making process. Holacracy has a constitution that's like, 20 pages long. It's like a very long document that really details out every single aspect of the decision-making process. Sociocracy doesn't have that. You just have to come up with it yourself. So Holacracy kind of uses the same principles, but it's a full operating system for an organization. And I've used it before. In the last business that I worked for, the Integral Center, we used Holacracy. So I'm really familiar with it. I've been in lots of Holacracy meetings. I've read the Constitution. I've made a mind map of the Constitution. Because, honestly, when I found Holacracy, I cried. I was like, oh my God, somebody figured this out. I don't have to spend the next 10 years of my life figuring this out because somebody already did it. So I'm really rambling here. I just drank a lot of coffee, sorry. But yeah, Holacracy is consent driven. Do you have any questions about that?
No, that pretty much, that cleared it up really well. There's not a whole lot to dig in there. Just if you have a problem, then come up with a clear purpose and process to kind of retaliate that and argue that if you need to.
Yeah, so we would define the purpose of the organization, and then every role, and a role is like a job description, but in Holacracy, instead of just having one position in the company hierarchy, we actually have multiple roles. And so it's more of a flat organization because it's not like this manager is above this person. You could have some managerial responsibilities in a role up here, but then you could also have a role where you're just gardening, So it's not like some people are above other people. And kind of the selling point of Holacracy that, they use to try to entice people is that we're actually getting rid of managers, that there are no managers. And by manager, they mean people who have the power to micromanage you, people who have the power to say, I don't like how you're doing this, do it differently. In Holacracy, when you have a role, that role has authority. That role has the ability to make decisions about how you do your own job. And that's what people are consenting to. They're consenting to you being able to do your job however you see fit. And as long as you are fulfilling the purpose of your role and fulfilling the accountabilities of your role, whether that's like, producing a certain amount of food or just taking care of a certain number of square feet of garden, for example, as long as you're doing that, you can show that you're doing that, you get to stay in your role, right? It's only if, you're failing to do that the leader of your team might take you out of that role and put you in a different role. It's not like you lose your job. It's not like you're kicked out of the company if you don't do a particular role well. You just get assigned to a different role. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's easier to move people around because you don't necessarily lose all of your responsibilities when you lose a role. You just lose some of them. So, it's easier to put people in the positions that they're best to fill. Yeah. So when you have a role, you can make any decision within that domain without having to ask any permission. And this is why it's radically different than consensus. Like in a consensus organization, people get mad at you if you don't ask them permission to paint the wall, even if it's your job to paint the walls, So you don't have to ask permission to do something within your role. But if you're doing something that requires other people to help you, or that might affect other people's ability to do their job, that's when you have to come to the group and ask permission. And the way you do that is by making a proposal. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right. So, that what I just described is actually tactical. So if you were going to paint the wall, but there's a bunch of furniture in the way and somebody else is in charge of the furniture, you might have to ask them, are you willing to move the furniture so that I can paint the walls? Mm-hmm. Right? So that would be a tactical decision. You make a tactical proposal. I propose that the furniture person moves the furniture. And as long as they say yes, the proposal passes. Okay, so tactical is really, really simple, and we'll do that all the time. And you can just literally do it by just asking that person. You don't even have to like make a big deal of it in your team. You can just say to the person you need permission from, hey, would you be willing to do this? It's only if you needed like the whole team's permission to do something that you might want to actually post in your forum and say, is everybody okay with us doing this?
Okay.
That makes sense.
Well, since we're on that, we could maybe talk a little bit more about the governance proposal.
Yeah, so governance is specifically just for making policies. So those are decisions that would carry on not just through one particular project or task, but through the life of the organization until you change it. So we're going to make a rule that you always have to do something, right? That's a governance proposal. Also creating or changing roles. So this is a little bit weird, is that in Holacracy, it's actually the whole team that works together through a group decision-making process to define the roles. But then it's the team leader's job to assign people to roles. And the reason for that is because the team leader is ultimately responsible for everything in the team. If somebody doesn't do their job, then the team leader is supposed to pull that person out and then do it themselves. Like you have to make up for everybody who's not doing their job. So having that ultimate responsibility means that person should have the ultimate power to say, you know, who's doing what. But
the circle that you're talking about?
Yeah, so teams are just called circles. I don't love that Holacracy has so much jargon. I'd rather it not, but they do, just so you know that they're talking about Holacracy. So yeah, circles are teams, and when they make an organizational chart, they use circles within circles within circles instead of like a pyramid thing.
Yeah, pyramids have a bad connotation to them.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like there is still a hierarchy, but the way they say it is it's a hierarchy of work, not a hierarchy of people. Because you can have a role on the outside circle or the inside circle. You can have, you know, roles anywhere in the organization. It's not like you are at this level. You know, it's detaching the ego from the role somewhat. Okay, so governance proposals, policies, and roles. And then I added for our anchor circle, for our biggest circle, editing the business model, because I want to use my business model canvas, and I'll pull that up really quick for people who haven't seen it. My business model canvas is a 7-page long, basically a business plan summary that I want to fill out. You know, I mean, I'll do all the work of like filling it in, but I will be asking questions of the group to get input on what we include in that. If we wanted to, we could write this out in narrative form and make, you know, like a 30-page long business plan, but I feel like just that wordsmithing isn't necessary. If we can just get the general ideas of what we're doing into bullet points, into a format that is easily readable, then that's good enough.
Yeah, I think making it kind of simple and in layman's terms is going to be best for the group.
Yeah. And some of this, I mean, I'm probably going to put it in legalese at first, but then translate it into layman's terms, you know.
I think that would be a really good idea for sure.
Yeah.
Make it a little bit easier to understand, for sure. But it's just this first part that honestly is very just like legalistic, and then everything else just sounds very normal and easy to understand. Yeah, I didn't really have any troubles understanding anything else.
Yeah, I went ahead and you know, added a bunch of other proposals just to get things going. But yeah, let's just keep reading through this first proposal and get all the details worked out. So I propose we adopt, going back to the first part, that we adopt the Holacracy Constitution. So like I said, Holacracy has a constitution. If you adopt that officially, then you're following those rules. You know, I do think that Holacracy could use a little tweaking in some contexts. I don't think it's perfect. For example, when you have teams that are mostly made up of brand new people who don't know Holacracy yet, you know, you might just want the team leader to be able to do things however they need to and not have to have these like meetings. So we might like give the team leaders the power to, you know, decide how their teams are run, or circles, you know, are run. And if it's just not, if it just doesn't make sense to have, you know, governance meetings, then maybe they don't. You know, maybe if everybody's just doing the same thing, we're just meeting to garden and there's no kind of hierarchy needed, then let's just do that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But at least at first, I think we should just adopt the Constitution so we have some rules to get started, and then we could change those rules as we go.
Yeah, just have some structure to begin with, and then kind of figure things out as we go.
Tweak them. Exactly. And then asynchronous, meaning that we can't get everybody together for a meeting, so let's use an online forum and documents to make proposals and accept them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So to create a proposal, so there are two kinds that I explained, governance and tactical. So we would have a separate, I think, forum. We could do it all in the same one. I don't love GroupMe that we're using right now, because if you're trying to reply to somebody, it like just copies the whole initial text. You can't have threads like it does on Facebook. So maybe if we could find another platform that does do that, we could use Facebook, although I think there's some people who might want to be involved who just don't want to be on Facebook. I don't know if Slack lets you do that. That could be another option.
Slack is a great, I've used Slack before, and that's a great format for like chatting, and I think that would be a really good idea, actually.
Yeah, we might switch over to Slack, and then we would have like a different, you know, little subgroup for each circle. And so you could just have one for each circle, and that could be both governance and tactical, but I'm proposing here that you have a separate one for governance and a separate one for tactical. And then we might have a separate list discussion that's for like harvests, like, hey, there's tomatoes available at this address, just so that it doesn't all get mixed together and lost in conversation. So yeah, when you want to make a proposal, you just announce, I have a proposal. If it's a governance proposal, then I'm suggesting here that you put it in this document so that we can track them all in one place. You could copy and paste it all into the forum as well. But that you use this format, meaning that you say what type of proposal it is, who's proposing it, what date it's proposed by, and then summarize the proposal like I have here. And then this last sentence is that the secretary of that circle will transfer the information into a policies and rules document after it passes. So we would have one document for all of the circle's policies and another document for all of the circle's roles. So if somebody's like, I wonder who is in this role or who's doing what, then they can just go to that document and see all of the roles listed out and not have to search through the proposals. And then the proposals document would be a history of everything that's ever been passed. So if somebody's like, hey, I want to change this, and somebody who's in the circle is like, yeah, we already did that. Look down there. You know, you can like look back and see, oh, we actually tried that and it didn't work. So having a record. Yeah. So there'd be 3 documents for governance: the proposals, the roles, and the policies. And then for tactical, as I said, like if it's just like one other person you need to ask permission to do something from, just ask them. You know, I don't want to make things too complicated here. But, you know, if it's like everybody in the team needs to be involved in the project, then you would post it in the forum and say, you know, these people or these roles need to approve this, and here's what I want to do. and then you move forward. So then the process for governance, there's 3 steps. You ask for clarifying questions, then you ask for concerns. Did I put the word concerns? Yeah, concerns. Maybe I should like highlight these or something. Let me just highlight these in like some pink color or something so that you can. If I can find things. And then objections. So there's 3 steps in the process, which if we were in person, you would just say, does anyone have any questions? Does anyone have any concerns? Does anyone have any objections? But since we're doing this in a forum and people need time to read it and respond, I'm proposing that we give 3 days for each one. Unless everybody just immediately says no questions, no concerns, or no objections, then you can skip to the next step. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so with the questions and concerns, not everyone needs to respond. If people just don't respond, you can just move to the next one. But with objections, I think everybody does need to say no objections to move on, to actually pass it. So although it does say with 3 days with no objections, actually in a meeting you would have to have everybody say it, but doing this asynchronously, and Holacracy 1, the organization that created Holacracy, actually has this built in to their platform that they use for decision making. They do have an asynchronous governance system, and this is how they do it. Like if the proposal is there for a certain amount of time and no one objects, it passes. So I'm actually copying the way that they do it. So yeah, if nobody objects for 3 days, you move on. And then if somebody does object, there are rules in Holacracy that say what makes an objection valid. And basically you just have to show through some logical, rational evidence that passing this would hurt the organization or would hurt the team in their ability to fulfill their purpose, or that, something really bad could happen and that we wouldn't have time to reverse it. So if it's like, let's say, for example, somebody was proposing that we transplant a bunch of plants from one place to another. And like hypothetically, that would be great, but somebody's like, you can't transplant those. They're not going to survive, and if we dig them up and we put them and we try to move them, they're going to die. Like we're going to lose those plants. Like I know this, that would be a valid objection because you can't undo it after it's done. But if it's like, hey, let's start putting our tools in this other spot because it's hard for us to get to this one spot and we want to, move the tools to a different location. It's like, we can always undo that. It's not going to cause any damage. It might cause some like headache if that actually doesn't work, but you can always undo it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the facilitator of the circle who kind of tests that, whether it passes or not. If the objection does pass, then the proposal just dies. You would have to write a different proposal that addresses that issue in order to try again. And if nobody, gives a valid objection, then it passes. So in the last sentence, I just, wrote that thing about if everybody just says no questions, no concerns, no objections, then it just passes immediately. So, okay, then the tactical process. So this is for projects, next steps, or outputs. So like creating something, like we need to create a flyer. So, but if it takes more than one person because you need to get the copy from this person and then this person needs to actually make it, then you need to make a proposal, which could be just asking that person directly. But, if it's like 3 people and you can't get all those people together, then you might just post it in the forum. So yeah, you just propose it, you say who's involved, who needs to pass it, and then if everybody says yes, that it goes. If anybody objects for any reason, it doesn't pass. So here you don't have the facilitator involved. If somebody objects, that's their prerogative because it involves their role. And like I said, we're consenting for people to do their own roles however they see fit. So whatever reason somebody has for not wanting to do something within their role, that automatically passes. However, if somebody that wasn't named says, hey, I don't like that, then it's up to the facilitator to decide whether that person's objection is valid because they weren't originally involved. It's like, are you actually going to be affected by this? If it doesn't affect you, then it's really none of your business, is kind of the way that Holacracy sees things. You have to kind of prove that it affects you because we don't want everybody just trying to weigh in on every little thing.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and of course you can always take that. Like if somebody has input, they can give you a suggestion. And if you're, trying to make a proposal and somebody says something like, oh yeah, then yeah, you can totally integrate that and change your proposal. It doesn't prevent anybody from giving input. It just means if you're not actually affected by it, then you can't force the issue.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the updates part. So in the forum, this is just part of a tactical meeting, would be updating everybody on your projects, next steps, and outputs. So normally we would have a round, where you ask everybody, did you pay the bills this month? Did you, give new orientations to the new members? You just do this checklist of the things that are supposed to be done regularly and check them off. And then you record any metrics. So, okay, how many new members do we have? How much money did we spend this month? You write all of that down in the metrics spreadsheet. So we'd have, all of our accounting. And then project updates. So, how far along are we on this project? So that's a normal part of a tactical meeting. But if we're not having meetings, then we just have to say that, you have to check in on a regular basis, saying whether you did this thing, updating the metrics, and letting people know about your projects, whether that's once a week or once a month. That would just be written into the accountabilities of each role to do that. So they would just do that in the forum and update documents. I like having documents for big projects so that you can, have a record of everything you're doing for each project, which would help the team leader, called a lead link, to know that you're doing your job, right? So that would all be tracked in documents and the forum. And then the secretary would track that that's happening. And, they would have just a list of, okay, this role is supposed to do this, this, and this. This role is supposed to do this, this, and this. So they just look through that once a month and let the lead link know whether people are doing it or not.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yay, it makes sense. Awesome. I'm excited. Okay, so that's the proposal.
That works.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything, other questions you have about, what the other proposals, what we've been discussing so far?
The only thing that I was thinking about, and this kind of just an off the wall thought, with the membership fees and everything, I wonder if in the winter time when we're probably not going to be working as much,
Mm-hmm.
or getting as much vegetables and fruit or whatever we're doing,
Mm-hmm.
if we would do the same amount of money or not, or if that would fluctuate in any way.
Mm-hmm.
That was just kind of like a thought that I had.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm thinking of other things we could do. So we could process food to like can things. We could get together and make our own laundry soap. Like I make all of my own laundry detergent and it costs me like $5 for 4 gallons of laundry detergent, you know, and if we just used that money that people are paying in to buy supplies and we all got together and had a meeting or a work day where we made a bunch of laundry detergent, and even if you couldn't make it to the work day, you still got some of it.
Okay, yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah. I think there's other things we could do. We'd be making our Korean natural farming inputs like we did this last year. So there would still be work days happening. There would still be lots of educational stuff. And I think we would have some produce because like we had kale all last year. I think we could, grow winter crops and have some produce even over the winter. And we have that hoop house. You know, if we wanted to go ahead and use the money to get plastic and put it over the greenhouse, then we would have vegetables all year long.
Yeah, I was wondering about that as well. Like making some kind of enclosed space and having more stuff year round.
Yeah, and I really want an indoor space
eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's kind of what I had, like, from reading this last night. Everything else. The stock thing, I feel like that's big.
Yeah, I just added that yesterday.
Yeah, I feel like that's maybe something more like when things start rolling more and everything.
Yeah, I went ahead and added that because I don't want to blindside people of just like, oh, by the way, but like that's why I'm doing this. Like I really want to create a superstructure so that we can create all sorts of farming businesses, and this is really just the beginning. But that does not need to be passed anytime soon. That could be 6 months from now. That could be a year from now. We definitely need to get members. We need to get things rolling. I just want to be transparent so I don't get a bunch of pushback when I finally do say, oh, by the way, I want to get paid for all the work I've been doing. I want to have a legacy. I want to have like an actual thing and not just a kind of fun club to be a part of. Like I'm trying to make a living doing this work. So, I'm trying to create a way to do that that wouldn't really directly affect the people who just want to be members of this. I mean, I'm talking about getting paid in stock, not cash. So it wouldn't really, and this is a co-op, so really it would be the members who would be making decisions. As an investor member, I wouldn't really have that much sway. And that's just how co-ops work. Investors don't have as much say as the members.
How are like the roles going to be like chosen?
Yeah, and like I commented on there. Let me just scroll down so people can see what the heck we're talking about. I defined some initial roles. So sorry, my throat is messed up today. So as I said here, there's no lead link to assign people roles initially, because before we incorporate, there's no board of directors to hire the lead link. Normally, I mean, it's like a CEO position, the lead link of the anchor circle. So without a board, you don't have somebody being assigned that. So we could just use elections at first. Which I mentioned up there, any lead link could decide to have elections. Like if they wanted to, they could say, I think everybody in the circle should have a say in who does what, and just do it that way. It's just ultimately the lead link has responsibility for making sure everything gets done. So automatically the facilitator and secretary would be elected anyway. So if we just extended that to these other positions, then that's how we could fill these initially. And then after that, we could, we would have a lead link who would assign people. But I think by then we'd have these roles broken down into much smaller roles and maybe even circles.
I think that's all of my questions. I think there will probably be more once everybody else kind of like puts their thoughts in and everything. And then I think it's probably a good idea to maybe have like a little, if we get more people can get together to kind of, or have like a class like you said about the Holacracy thing, would be a good idea as well. Just have like a little class on it or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, if we could actually get people together, we could have like a little mock meeting, to show the process. But we're kind of doing it in the forum right now. When I'm saying, okay, does anyone have clarifying questions? Does anyone have concerns? Does anyone have an objection? That's showing everybody how the process works. So maybe people will just catch on as well. But yeah, it would be great to have an actual workshop.
This is good.
All
right, awesome. This is much clearer now.
Awesome. Sure. Great. Thanks. Yeah. So thank you for joining me. Thank you anybody who's been watching this and getting caught up with us. And if you're watching this, if you happen to stumble across it online and you want to get involved in this project, please let us know. Or if you're not in Norman and you're interested in doing this in your own area, you can get a hold of me. I'm a business consultant. I can help you get that set up in your own area. So thank you, Lindsay. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see y'all later. Bye.
Bye.